get your butt off the pew and do something. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of violence. I don't have a hatred to somebody who has a different point of view than me.
Thank you for joining us here at NewsNation. Our guest this week on One Nation Under God is actor and producer Kevin Sorbo, whose on-screen career spans decades. His big break back in the 1990s with the series Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. He's appeared in over 80 films, and in recent years starred in several faith-based projects, including the God's Not Dead franchise. He's starring in 2 films set for release this summer. And Sorbo is equally famous for what he says off camera, often on social media, first being very outspoken about his faith, saying Hollywood blackballed him for going public about his conservative values. Then there's his stance on the government, politics, and culture, which he believes has long been a menace to masculinity. He most recently authored 2 children's books on how to be a better dad and how to raise boys to be strong men. We've featured stories here on One Nation Under God focused on that topic all month long, and I had the chance to hear his perspective one-on-one. Here's that conversation. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really good.
Where are you based?
Oh, I'm in Chicago.
Oh my gosh, another fun city.
Well, I'll be honest, I love Chicago with all my heart. I didn't know it, but it's like, it's been a gift. It's like, to me, even though there's a lot going on here, it's like heaven on earth every time I wake up in the morning.
There you go. That's what counts. I'm a Viking, you're a Bear fan, but we can get along.
All right, cool. I'm glad we can get along. We're examining faith and Americans who look at their pursuit of dreams and happiness and livelihood and freedom and liberty using faith as their value system. So can you just tell me why, for you, this is something that cannot be ignored, this discussion about masculinity?
Well, I think the emasculation of men has been going on for decades. And you can see it within the American culture, what's going on with it. I mean, you can go back to sitcoms in the 70s and what they do, the dad would be kind of chunky and out of shape. Mom would be a babe. The teenage kids would use dad as a pincushion and make fun of him and stuff like that. And they've been doing that for such a long time. The whole idea is they're saying, hey, the father's not that important in the family. We've been teaching, generations of kids that now, and it's really sad. And you see the breakup of the family unit. You see people getting married much later, people having kids much later, or not having kids at all. My latest book from Brave Books, The Bare Essentials of Fatherhood, and it shows the importance of a father in the family. Kirk Cameron really started doing it first, and he got attacked for it, which I thought was quite interesting. But it's like, it's the smallest minority that seems to have the biggest voice in these attacks. The majority of parents want Kirk Cameron to read to the kids in a public library. But for some reason, a lot of these same parents were okay with drag queens reading these books to the kids. I'm just going, this country is so wacky with its ideology right now. It's just crazy. So I got vocal about it. And the first book I came out with these guys is called it's called The Test of Lin Hood. And it's about letting boys grow up to be strong men, be strong fathers, strong husbands, strong pillars within the community.
Why do you think it's become so controversial to say that we want to raise boys to be strong men?
Yeah, I wish I had the answer for that because it makes no sense to me, but they've been doing forever. It started, I think, the feminist movement didn't help much at all. The attack on, men, saying men and women are equal. No, there's some things that are equal within both sexes, but there's a lot of difference between both sexes too, good and bad. And it's weird to me that we have to sit there and talk about this subject because it's I look at these 20-somethings, these popular rock stars now or in pop culture or movie, and they dress up just like bizarre. They almost dress up very feminine. And I look at that and it just makes me laugh. And, and that comes from the culture. It comes from what television, what movies have done, what our government has done. Fear is an amazing weapon. I think that's what keeps a lot of people's voices quiet.
Well, I just think, and this is something that's at the core of what this particular conversation is about. The whole month of June, I'm doing stories dedicated to boys in need of rescue. I happen to have 4 brothers. And ever since I was...
That's my family.
Really? How many sisters?
And my sister's in the middle.
Okay, so I'm one of 7, you're one of 6.
Yeah, 5.
5 total. So, but I've seen some of the things that have happened, and it gives pause. There are statistics out now that more young men between age 18 to 34 are friendless, or they can't count themselves as having one close friend. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to get your take on, besides the books, and maybe you can talk about what's in your books, what is it that you would appeal, just common sense, or just, realistically, to moms and dads? Because I think a lot of parents feel like they don't know what to do. They don't want to be anti anyone. They just want to make sure that they're doing the right thing for their sons.
Get them off their computers. I mean, the internet's a wild west out there. Get them off their little video games. I mean, that's why they don't have friends. They dive into that stuff, and they count their friends on how many people are following them on social media. Those aren't friends. They follow you because they either hate you or they like what you're posting. You always get these trolls out there. I get these trolls all the time. It just cracks me up. They think their anger towards me is going to change my lifestyle somehow. All it does is make their life worse. I mean, they just get deeper and deeper in this dark hole. I know Charles Barkley really well, and Shaquille O'Neal, and those guys are coming out and speaking up and saying, what have the Democrat Party done for us in the last 60 years? What have they done? Our education system, white, black, indifferent, whatever, our education system is horrific. And what they're teaching kids now is just teach kids. When I went to school, nobody told me how to vote. Nobody told me to believe in God or not believe in God. They taught me math. They taught me history. They taught me these things. They don't teach civics in school anymore. Why? Because they don't want kids to know it's we the people. The government wants to be God. That's what they want to be. They want cradle to grave responsibilities for our lives. And they're working really hard to make that happen. So I tell parents right now, kick your kids outside and go play. My gosh, I played outside all the time. Every home I lived on, we lived in a dense street with 7 homes. Everybody had a different bell or whistle to call in for dinner. But they had to blow the whistle a dozen times before he came because we're having too much fun. Bonding together and playing games and playing sports and stuff, and kids don't do that anymore. I see parks empty all the time now. When I was growing up, the parks were filled all the time.
What would you say to young men, teenagers, 20-somethings, who feel like they have no purpose, who feel like they don't know how to get out of the cycle that was perhaps perpetuated by negative imagery on social media or on television, or a lack of the father in the home, or feeling hopeless in a world that looks like, to some people, it's falling apart? What would be your advice as a big brother and as a male role model to those young men?
Well, don't let anyone set your limitations, especially yourself. A lot of people, God never promised an easy life to anybody. We all have obstacles in life. How do you react to those obstacles? I always say, you can blame everybody else, the world, the universe, God, whatever, people. But look in the mirror. I always say, cue Michael Jackson's song, The Man in the Mirror, because that's where it starts. You got to look in the mirror and say, okay, this is going on in my life. What am I going to do about it? We all know the difference between right and wrong. It's up to you to make the decision which road you want to go on. And I always say, in the poem from Robert Frost, The Road Less Taken, I think Jesus was the original guy walking on the road less traveled. And I look at it upon myself that I want to make the road less traveled a superhighway. So I do a lot of speaking events. I do pro-life speaking, Christian education, motivational health. I do all different kinds of speaking events. And I always tell people the same thing. You've got to be the person to make these decisions in your life to move forward or step back. And stepping back is not going to make your life any easier, any better. In fact, it's going to make it darker. And you got to find the light in your life to do that. And I think the answer is we need to get a country back, back to God, because we took the Bible out in 1964 and it's been going downhill since. And do you realize 1964, we were the #1 best educated country. We're now somewhere around 27th to 28th.
I've talked to community leaders. I've talked to people in cities and in neighborhoods. And one woman who I spoke to said, nobody's coming to save you. You cannot expect the government to come and save you. You cannot expect any politician to make any legislation to come and save you. So, we've seen some of the folks who handle that with protests in the streets. You mentioned college campuses earlier. I'm sure they would also say, the government's not coming to save, so we're going to make our voices heard. But what would be your appeal to Americans who aren't going to march in the streets necessarily, but they feel like we need to be empowered? What does empowerment look like to a person of faith in America in 2024?
Get off your pew, get your butt off the pew and do something. Be part of the process. I think the biggest killer, not only in America and all countries right now, is apathy. Fear is a proponent of that, and people just go around, oh, well, what can I do? And I've got liberal friends that sit there and go, well, they're only asking one little thing. And I said, they're asking one little thing every week for the last 60 years. It's turned into miles of stuff. A lot of people don't even realize the amount of freedom that has eroded from our country alone. I look at the American Revolution with the British monarchy. Our government treats us far worse than the British did. And we created a Revolutionary War because with over a 2% tax. I mean, look what we're doing now. Most people got to work 5 months just to pay their tax. And the government says you can keep the other 6 or 7 months. I mean, it's crazy how we've just let the government get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And all they do is print money. I mean, I posted on the internet one time, I said, why do we have to pay taxes if they can just keep printing money? And that's what they keep doing. The debt we have in this country is unbelievable. And the last time the budget was balanced was at the end of Clinton's first term. That's the first time our budget was balanced.
But you mentioned some of your liberal friends.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, I think a lot of folks, even I talk to young people, you know, those in their teens and 20s, and sometimes they feel bad because they have friends who have a different lifestyle than them, have different belief systems than them. And while they have strong faith, they don't really know exactly how to have conversations. So how do you have conversations with people who have very different beliefs than you?
Well, these are friends I've had for a long time. You know, I've got some who became Republican, conservative, because they said, the party left me. And both parties are moving further and further and further left. I see that in both sides. I tell my really hardcore liberal friends and people I never met that I know they're liberal. I post sometimes, I go, watch Kennedy's inauguration speech in 1960 and ask me if you can find one Democrat who talks that way today. Kennedy in 1960 today would be a conservative. All you have to do is listen to that speech. And what the number one thing on that speech that he talked about that's on his gravestone is ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And there's barely any Republicans that say that today. I mean, we live in it's crazy what we're doing out there. But I'm always open to people. I don't have a hatred to somebody who has a different point of view than me. I really don't. I look at the people on the left. I mean, they talk about that party used to be the Democrat, the liberal party. They better look up the word liberal because that means that they embrace everybody's point of view. And they don't do that anymore. And there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of violence. And it's scary right now what's happening in our major cities. I look at my hometown city of Minneapolis where I grew up and I go, my gosh, what happened to that town? Because it's just nuts right now. They got rid of the Minnesota state flag now and replaced the flag that looks like something from Somalia. It's really weird. It's really weird. My buddy sent me the new picture of the flag and they went, look at what we've done to the state of Minnesota.
What is your greatest hope that keeps you moving forward in this year and ahead of an election?
Well, I think the word you just mentioned is the biggest thing people are looking for, and that's hope. And I hope the dark tunnel that people live in their lives and find no hope, that if they look and squint hard enough, they can see light at the end of the dark tunnel, and they follow that light, and I hope they find God.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate it. It's an honor to meet you. I've heard a lot of things about you in terms of your passion, and I now have living proof you are so passionate. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Great meeting you.
Nice to meet you. What do you believe are some solutions that faith presents?
Yeah, I think fathers in the family have lost their way. I would tell you that when I was a judge over 22 years, probably 80% of the young people that came in front of me for problems related to crime didn't have a father figure in their lives. And once you get to that point, if fathers are shirking their duties in regard to raising their families, to teaching sons how to be men and their daughters how to relate to men other than sexually, then we're going to be in a lot more trouble than we are now. We've got to go back to that standpoint of whether we have fathers of faith who are willing to put the time and effort into being daddies to their children.
Do you think that by instilling faith in some way in culture within these organizations that are actually trying to help young people, you could potentially provide that father figure?
Well, I don't know that you could replace that father figure, but there are individuals who are stepping into the lives of children who, though they may not be able to totally replace a good father, are doing a great job of relating to these children.
So how do you instill faith into a legal system and a court system that actually ties a lot of hands?
Well, the first thing that we've done is we've chased faith totally away. If it has anything to do with faith, you can't utilize it. And so we have to allow those partnerships to come back in with maybe some alternatives to prison that don't exist right now. I can tell you that alcohol and drug abuse are central to problems that exist in our criminal justice system. And those facilities and those programs that are most effective with dealing with those kinds of issues are faith-based, because it really, you can't not get better from a drug addiction or addiction of any kind until you realize there's something greater than you are. And that's what faith brings to us. They help us, it helps us realize that there's something more to life than just everything centering on me. It takes the victimhood away from me. It takes the pride away from me, because I'm no longer better than other people. Based on a real relationship, in my case with Christ, that makes all the difference in the world, so that you can see the world through the lens of his eyes, as opposed to a secular viewpoint, which really takes away the worth of the individual. Our whole system is, even our welfare system, is designed to take the worth away from an individual and make them victims of a situation which does not allow them to grow past where they are and to become what they ought to be in the fullness of their abilities and the fullness of their opportunities that they ought to be receiving, and they're not now, because we just throw money at the problem and expect it to go away.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.